A golden tanager beat its wings one last time before landing gently on Ben's palm, its bright eyes fixed on the old gardener's wrinkled face. Tears streamed down Ben's cheeks as he whispered, "Now you can go in peace, my friend. The park will forever be green." But to understand the depth of that moment, we must go back 3 months, when Willow Creek Park still breathed life in every flower bed and leafy tree, before the bulldozers of Millennium Construction threatened to transform this urban sanctuary into another glass and concrete building. Ben Carter was 68 years old, 30 of them entirely dedicated to that park. He arrived every day at 5 in the morning, when dew still kissed the rose petals and birdsong was the only soundtrack of the sleeping city. His calloused fingers knew every grain of soil, every sprouting root, every yellowing leaf. He wasn't just a gardener, he was the silent guardian of a small paradise that resisted amidst urban chaos. That Monday morning, arriving with his old bicycle and the toolbox clanging on the rack, Ben found a new sign planted in the center of the park. Area reserved for construction, Millennium Developments. His legs trembled, his heart pounded. For a moment, the world spun in slow motion, and he had to lean against the trunk of the ancient fig tree to avoid fainting. "It can't be," he murmured, running his trembling fingers over the metal sign. "It can't be." But it was. The city had sold the parkland to the construction company, citing the need for urban modernization and job creation. The project called for the complete demolition of the green space to build a 20-story commercial complex. Residents of the neighborhood would receive a 45-day notice to say goodbye to the place. Ben looked around, seeing his whole life reflected in that space. There was the daisy bed he planted when his first granddaughter was born. There the wooden bench he had repaired countless times, where elderly people gathered every afternoon to play dominoes, and high up among the branches of the jaboticaba tree, the nest of the golden tanager that had chosen that place as its home 15 years ago. The bird, as if sensing the tragedy, descended and landed on Ben's shoulder, emitting a melancholic song that seemed to translate all the anguish of the moment. The old gardener gently stroked the golden feathers of the little creature. "I know, little friend," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "I don't know where we're going either." In the following days, Ben continued his work as if nothing had changed, but something had transformed in his heart. Each rose bush he pruned, each blade of grass he trimmed, each dry leaf he collected, took on an almost sacred meaning. They were his last gestures of love for that place. The tanager began to accompany him constantly, like a silent co-conspirator in a battle that seemed lost before it even began. It was on one of those mornings that Mrs. Eleanor, an elderly lady with white hair and very lively eyes who had frequented the park for over 20 years, approached Ben with a determined expression. "Ben, my son," she said, sitting beside him on the bench under the fig tree, "we can't let this happen." The gardener sighed, wiping his dirty hands on his faded apron. "Mrs. Eleanor, you know I have no power against these people. I'm just a city employee. If they order it demolished, I have to obey." "Who says you're alone?" the old woman replied, her eyes sparkling with youthful energy. "This park doesn't belong only to you, Ben. It belongs to all of us, to the children who play here every day, to the elderly who find peace on these benches, to the birds that build their nests in these trees. We are a community, and a community doesn't abandon its home without a fight." Ben looked up, where the golden tanager hopped from branch to branch, and for the first time in weeks, he felt a spark of hope ignite in his chest. Mrs. Eleanor was not a woman of half measure. In the following weeks, she organized meetings at the community center, distributed flyers to local businesses, created a messaging group with park regulars, and even learned to use social media to publicize the cause. The Save Willow Creek Park movement grew organically, fueled by the genuine love people had for that space. But not everything was rosy in the path of resistance. Dr. Marcus Weil, director of Millennium Developments, was a man accustomed to winning. Tall, elegant, in impeccable suits and with a calculated smile, he had transformed several public spaces in the city into lucrative ventures. For him, the park was nothing more than underutilized land that could generate millions in revenue. "You need to understand," he said, during a public hearing held at City Hall, that progress is inevitable. This park, however charming, does not contribute economically to the development of the city. Our project will generate 300 direct jobs and attract investments that will benefit the entire region. Ben was sitting in the last row of the auditorium, wearing his best shirt, his hands trembling over the cap he held in his lap. When Dr. Vile opened the floor for community comments, Mrs. Eleanor nudged his arm. "Go on, Ben. Tell them what this park really means." The gardener looked around, seeing all those important people in suits and ties, and felt small, very small. But then he remembered the golden tanager, who at that moment was alone in the park, probably looking for him. He remembered the children running among the trees every afternoon, the elderly, who found relief from loneliness on the shady benches, the mothers who brought their babies to breathe fresh air. He stood up slowly, and his voice, though trembling at first, gained strength with each word. "Dr. Vile, I don't know much about economics or urban development. I'm just a gardener, but I've tended that park for 30 years like it was my own home. I know 17 different bird species live there, that the neighborhood kids learn the names of the flowers playing among the flower beds, that Mr. Jones found solace from his depression after his wife died by sitting under the fig tree every afternoon." He paused, seeing he had the room's attention. "You talk about progress, and I respect that. But is progress just buildings and money? Isn't it also about preserving a place where people can be happy without having to buy anything, where a child can see a flycatcher up close, where a couple can kiss under the stars without bothering anyone?" Dr. Vile maintained his smile, but something in his eyes had changed. "Mr. Carter, I understand the emotional attachment, but we live in a modern society that needs functional and productive spaces." Functional. Ben was surprised by the firmness of his own voice. "Doctor, that park functions 24 hours a day. In the morning, it functions as an outdoor gym for those who walk. During the day, it functions as a biology school for children. In the afternoon, it functions as a community center for the elderly. At night, it functions as a refuge for those who need to think. And at dawn, it functions as a home for dozens of animals that have nowhere else to live. Can you tell me what function your building will have besides generating profit?" A murmur went through the auditorium. Some council members exchanged glances. Dr. Vile lost his smile for a few seconds before regaining it. "Mr. Carter, you speak from the heart, and that's admirable. But urban decisions need to be made with reason. And who says the heart doesn't have reason?" The gardener retorted, surprising himself with his courage. "Do you have children, doctor?" "I do." "Where did they play when they were little?" Dr. Vile hesitated. "In the condominium where we lived. It had a green area." "That's right. You gave your children a green area. Now you want to take the green area away from other people's children." The silence that followed was deafening. Ben sat down, his heart pounding, but with the feeling that he had said everything he needed to say. The campaign to save the park intensified after the public hearing. The video of Ben's speech went viral on social media, and people from all over the city began visiting Willow Creek Park to see the place that a simple gardener had defended with such passion. Journalists came to do reports, environmentalists offered support, and even some local personalities spoke out in favor of preserving the space. But Dr. Vile wasn't willing to give up easily. He intensified the pressure on the city hall, reminding the politicians of the economic benefits of the project and the contributions his company made to election campaigns. He hired a public relations firm to highlight the positive aspects of the project and minimize the importance of the park. It was during this period that Ben noticed something worrying. The golden tanager was different. The bird, which had always been vibrant and active, began to show signs of sadness. It spent hours motionless on its favorite branch. Its song had become rare and melancholic, and sometimes not even the seeds that Ben offered aroused its interest. "You're feeling it too, aren't you, little friend?" the gardener murmured, watching the bird. "You know our home is threatened." The tanager came down and landed on his hand, something it rarely did, and Ben felt the small, quickened heart of the animal. It was as if the bird was trying to communicate something important, an urgency that transcended words. That night, Ben had a strange dream. He saw himself walking through the park, but it was different, larger, more exuberant, with immense trees and flowers of impossible colors. The golden tanager flew in front of him, guiding him to the center of the space, where a crystal-clear fountain sprang from the earth. When he woke up, the gardener was sure that dream meant something. The next morning he arrived earlier than usual and went straight to the place he had seen in the dream. There, where there was usually only grass, he began to dig. His hands found something solid a few inches from the surface, a large, smooth stone with inscriptions that time had partially erased. Carefully, Ben excavated around the stone, cleaned it with water, and tried to decipher the symbols. Although he couldn't read everything, some words were clear. 1892, dedicated memory founders. His heart raced. This could be the key to saving the park. That same day, Ben sought out Mrs. Eleanor and showed her the discovery. The lady, who had been a history teacher before retiring, was moved. Ben, this could be a historical landmark. If we can prove that this park has patrimonial value, it will be much harder to demolish it. They contacted the Historical Heritage Institute, which sent a team of archaeologists to examine the site. The discovery was extraordinary. The park had been built over the old cemetery of the city's founders, and the stone found by Ben was a memorial in honor of the first families who settled in the region. The news caused a furor in the city. Religious groups protested against the desecration of the sacred site, historians highlighted the importance of preserving municipal memory, and even tourists began to visit the park to see the historical landmark. Dr. Weil, however, did not give up. He hired lawyers specializing in historical heritage who argued that the discovery was not enough to prevent the project, since the cemetery had been deactivated more than a century ago and the remains had probably already decomposed completely. The legal battle dragged on for weeks. Ben continued tending to the park as always, but now felt the weight of being at the center of a controversy that surpassed his capabilities. Journalists constantly sought him out. Lawyers asked complicated questions about the discovery, and politicians tried to use his image for their own agendas. Amidst all this chaos, only the golden tanager remained a comforting constant. The bird seemed to understand that Ben was overwhelmed and intensified its presence, accompanying him throughout his work and landing on his shoulder during moments of greatest tension. It was during one of these quiet mornings, as Ben watered the rose bushes while the tanager sang softly, that Dr. Weil appeared in the park. The businessman was alone, without his usual entourage of advisors, wearing casual clothes instead of his impeccable suit. "Mr. Carter," he said, approaching slowly, "may I have a word with you?" The gardener turned off the hose and turned to face him. "Of course, doctor. The park is public." Dr. Weil looked around, as if seeing the place for the first time. "It's really beautiful here," he admitted. "Very well maintained. Thank you, Mr. Carter. I came here to make a proposal. I know you've become a kind of symbol for this cause, and I respect that. How about if I offer you a job at my company? You could take care of the gardens of our commercial complex. I'd pay 3 times what you earn at the city." Ben was silent for a long moment, watching the golden tanager perched on the edge of the fountain. "Doctor, may I ask you a question?" "Of course. Why did you choose this particular park?" "The city has other available land." Dr. Weil sighed. "Because this is the perfect location. Centralized, with good infrastructure, easy access. From a commercial point of view, it's impeccable. And from a human point of view," the businessman hesitated. "What do you mean?" "Have you ever sat on this bench on a Sunday afternoon? Have you ever seen children playing hide and seek among the trees? Have you ever watched an elderly couple walking hand in hand along the stone paths?" "Mr. Carter, I understand that." "No, doctor. You don't understand." Ben's voice was firm, but not aggressive. "You see a plot of land. I see a home. You see commercial potential. I see life, and life cannot be bought or sold." Dr. Weil looked at his own hands. "And if I triple the offer?" "Doctor," said Ben, smiling sadly, "you're trying to buy something priceless. It's like me offering you money to sell your child. Don't be dramatic. It's just a park. For you, yes. For me, it's 30 years of my life. For that lady over there, he pointed to Mrs. Eleanor, who was approaching with a group of children. It's 20 years of happy afternoons. For these children, it's the place where they learn that the world can be beautiful. For this tanager here, the bird chirped as if understanding, it's the only home it knows. Dr. Vile watched the scene. The children ran towards Ben, hugging his legs and asking him to show them where the birds lived. The gardener smiled and began to guide them through the park, patiently explaining about each tree, each flower, each small inhabitant of the place. "Uncle Ben," said a girl of about 6, "is it true they're going to tear down our park?" The gardener knelt down to be at the child's level. "I don't know, my dearie. But while it's here, we'll take good care of it, won't we?" The girl nodded gravely and ran off to play with the others. Dr. Vile watched everything in silence. "Mr. Carter," he said after a long moment, "may I ask you a question?" "Of course. What would you do if you were me?" Ben thought carefully before answering. "Doctor, I would ask myself a question: what kind of world do I want to leave for my grandchildren? A world where everything becomes buildings and shopping malls, where children only see nature on television, where the elderly have no place to find peace, or a world where there's still room for a tanager to build its nest, where a child can learn that flowers have names, where two people can sit under a tree and simply be happy?" If you've been following stories like this, showing how small gestures can change the world, consider subscribing to our channel to continue receiving stories that touch the heart and inspire hope. Because in difficult times, we need more than ever stories that remind us of the beauty of humanity. Dr. Vile was silent for a long time, watching the children play, the elderly chatting on the benches, the tanager hopping from branch to branch. When he finally spoke, his voice was different. "Mr. Carter, I've built over 50 developments in this city, shopping malls, residential buildings, commercial complexes, all very financially successful, I imagine. But you know what? I can't remember seeing children playing in any of them. I can't remember seeing an elderly person smiling with genuine happiness in any of my developments." Ben said nothing, just continued listening. "I have 2 children," continued Dr. Vile. "My daughter is 8 years old. When she was little, she always asked me to take her to a park, but I was always busy, always had meetings, there was always something more important, until one day she stopped asking. It's never too late to change that, doctor. Is it? Of course it is. Children forgive easily, and they forget even easier. But they don't forget love." Dr. Vile looked at the golden tanager, which at that moment was building a new nest in one of the trees. "That bird, how long has it lived here?" 15 years. "It arrived as a chick, fell out of the nest during a storm. I took care of it until it was strong, but it never wanted to leave. I think it considers this place its family, and if the park is demolished," Ben sighed, "he'll try to find another place. But golden tanagers are territorial. At his age, he might not be able to adapt. He might die." "It's possible." Dr. Vile sat watching the bird for several minutes. Then suddenly, he pulled his cell phone from his pocket and made a call. "Roberto, it's me. I want you to cancel the Willow Creek Park project." "That's right, cancel it. Let's look for another site." "No, it's not because of the legal costs. It's because of a tanager." Ben felt his legs tremble. "Doctor, are you sure?" "Mr. Carter, I've spent my whole life building buildings. I think it's time to preserve at least one place where you can still see the sky." Tears flowed freely down the gardener's face. The golden tanager, as if understanding what had happened, flew down and landed on Dr. Vile's shoulder, who was initially startled but then smiled. "I think he's thanking me," said the businessman. "No, doctor, I think he's saying you were always welcome here. You just needed to find that out." In the following days, the news of Millennium Enterprises' withdrawal caused a sensation in the city. Dr. Vile faced criticism from investors and even some fellow businessmen, but he remained firm in his decision. More than that, he created a preservation fund to guarantee the permanent maintenance of the park and hired Ben as a special consultant for the project. "Mr. Carter," he said during the signing ceremony of the preservation agreement, "you taught me that there are things that are priceless, but I discovered that they have immense value." "What's the difference, Doctor? Price is what you pay, value is what you get in return, and the value of this park is incalculable." Ben smiled, feeling the golden tanager land gently on his hand. The bird sang a cheerful melody, and for the first time in months, the gardener felt his heart completely at peace. "Now you can stay forever, little friend," he whispered to the tanager. "Our home is safe, but the story doesn't end there." Dr. Weil not only abandoned the project, but became one of the city's biggest advocates for green spaces. He created a program for the preservation of parks and squares, always consulting Ben on the best methods of maintenance and environmental preservation. Mrs. Eleanor organized a permanent group of volunteers to help care for the park, and Sunday afternoons became true community celebrations with music, storytelling, and gardening workshops for children. The golden tanager became a kind of official mascot of the place, and it wasn't uncommon to see tourists photographing the bird, which apparently enjoyed the attention and sometimes deliberately posed for the cameras. Ben continued his daily work, but now with renewed energy. He knew that every flower he planted, every tree he pruned, every path he swept was an act of love that would be preserved for future generations. On a particularly beautiful afternoon, when the sun filtered through the leaves of the centuries-old fig tree, creating golden patterns on the ground, Dr. Weil appeared in the park, accompanied by a girl with large, curious eyes. "Mr. Carter," he said, "I'd like to introduce my daughter Beatrice." "Beatrice, this is Mr. Carter, the guardian of the park." The girl extended her small hand. "Daddy said you know all the birds here." "I do, my dear. Would you like me to introduce them to you?" The child's eyes lit up. "Can I?" Ben spent the whole afternoon showing Beatrice every corner of the park, telling stories about the animals that lived there, teaching her the names of the flowers, and even how to get the golden tanager to come down from the branch to eat from her hand. Weil watched everything with a smile he couldn't hide. When the afternoon began to cool and it was time to leave, Beatrice said goodbye to Ben with a tight hug. "Mr. Carter, can I come back tomorrow?" "Of course you can, my dear. The park is always here, waiting." When father and daughter walked away, hand in hand toward the car, Ben heard the girl ask, "Daddy, why did you want to tear this place down?" Dr. Weil's answer was low, but the wind carried the words to the gardener's ears. "Because I didn't know, honey. Sometimes we need to almost lose something to discover how important it is." That night, Ben stayed in the park later than usual, sitting on the bench under the fig tree, watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. The golden tanager was perched on the lowest branch, also contemplating the approaching night. "You knew, didn't you, little friend?" The gardener murmured, "You knew everything would be all right." The bird chirped softly, as if agreeing, and Ben felt a deep peace invade him. That park, with its centuries-old trees and its small inhabitants, would continue to exist. Children would still play among the flower beds, the elderly would still find comfort on the shaded benches, and the golden tanager would still build its nests among the familiar branches. More importantly, he had discovered that true strength lies not in money or power, but in the ability to touch people's hearts, that a sincere word can be worth more than 1,000 contracts, and that genuine love for something always finds a way to manifest itself. As he got up to leave, Ben stopped once more before the memorial to the city's founders, now protected by a small special garden he had created himself. He touched the ancient stone with affection. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for helping us save this place." The golden tanager flew to his hand one last time that day, and Ben felt the little bird's heart beating calmly against his palm. It was as if the animal were saying, "Thank you for never giving up on our home." And so, under a blanket of stars that had witnessed generations of human stories, the old gardener and his feathered companion silently sealed a pact of eternal love for that little piece of paradise that almost was lost, but which would now remain forever as proof that when people unite for a just cause, not even the most powerful of interests can destroy the strength of the human heart. Willow Creek Park would continue to flourish, and every spring that came, when the flowers bloomed and the birds sang their songs of renewal, everyone would remember the story of the gardener who taught a businessman that there are things in the world that have no price but have infinite value.